Marcus Chen had always dreamed of first contact, but he never imagined it would happen in the cargo bay of a damaged research vessel floating in the void between stars. The emergency beacon had been broadcasting for 3 days when his salvage crew picked it up. What they found inside changed everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the universe. The ship was unlike anything in human databases. Its hull curved in impossible ways, made from a material that seemed to shift between solid metal and flowing liquid, depending on the angle of observation. The airlocks were designed for beings much smaller than humans, forcing Marcus and his team to crawl through the passages on their hands and knees. They found her in what appeared to be the ship's medical bay, though the equipment looked more like art installations than surgical tools. She was roughly humanoid but stood only 4 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim emergency lighting. Her large dark eyes tracked their movement with intelligence, but when her gaze fell on Marcus specifically, something changed. Terror. Pure, absolute terror flooded her features. She pressed herself against the far wall, her delicate hands shaking as she pointed at him and spoke in a melodic language that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Her voice grew higher and more frantic with each word. Marcus raised his hand slowly, trying to appear non-threatening. "Easy there. We're here to help." His translator device remained silent. Whatever language she spoke was completely unknown to human technology. The alien female's reaction puzzled him. His teammates, Janet and Rodriguez, stood nearby, and while she glanced at them nervously, she didn't display the same visceral fear. It was Marcus specifically that terrified her, though he couldn't understand why. He was the smallest member of their salvage crew, barely 5'7", with a gentle disposition that had earned him the nickname Doc among his colleagues. As they attempted to communicate, Marcus noticed something odd about the ship's design. The corridors were reinforced with what looked like blast shielding, and scorch marks decorated several walls. This wasn't a research vessel as they'd initially assumed. The weapon ports became obvious once he knew what to look for. Cleverly disguised as sensor arrays, the alien female, who Janet had started calling Luna due to her pale, luminescent skin, gradually calmed down when Marcus stepped back and let his teammates take the lead. She seemed to understand their peaceful intentions, even accepting water and basic medical attention. But whenever Marcus moved too close or tried to help directly, that bone-deep terror returned. Through careful pantomime and drawing on the ship's holographic displays, Luna began to share fragments of information. She showed them star charts marking territories in red and blue, with humans clearly labeled as the Red Faction. The blue territories appeared to be her people's space, but they were shrinking rapidly on each successive map. Marcus studied the progression with growing unease. If these charts were accurate, humanity had been systematically conquering alien territory for decades. But that was impossible. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, and they'd encountered no other intelligent species in their expansion into space. Luna's people called themselves the Zephyrians, or at least that's what the universal translator finally managed to decode from her patient repetition. She was a medical officer aboard what the team now realized was a badly damaged warship. The evidence of battle was everywhere once they looked for it. Hull breaches sealed with emergency patches, burned-out weapon systems, and corridors still stained with what could only be alien blood. The most disturbing discovery came when Luna led them to the ship's memory core. The holographic recordings showed battles between Zephyrian vessels and ships bearing unmistakably human designs, but not any human ships Marcus recognized. These vessels were larger, more advanced, and bore insignia he'd never seen before. In the recordings, human soldiers moved with ruthless efficiency, their armor black and unmarked. They showed no mercy to Zephyrian civilians, treating them as obstacles rather than sentient beings. The humans in these recordings fought like they were exterminating vermin, not engaging in warfare between civilizations. Marcus watched in horror as human troops stormed Zephyrian settlements, their advanced weapons cutting through defensive barriers like paper. The aliens' own technology seemed primitive by comparison, their energy weapons barely scratching human armor plating. It was a massacre repeated across dozens of worlds, but none of it made sense. These couldn't be the same humans who had struggled to establish their first off-world colonies just a generation ago. The technology gap was impossible to explain, and the brutal efficiency of the soldiers in the recordings seemed alien to human nature itself. Luna had been studying Marcus throughout their exploration of her ship, her expression gradually shifting from terror to confusion. She began making soft chittering sounds while pointing at him, then at the recordings, then back at him again. Her large eyes narrowed as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. Rodriguez was the first to voice what they were all thinking. "Marcus, those soldiers in the recordings, they look exactly like you." It was true. The human soldiers shared Marcus's general build, his facial structure, even his distinctive Asian features. But where Marcus moved with careful consideration for others, these soldiers moved with predatory grace. Where Marcus spoke softly and smiled easily, these soldiers remained silent behind their faceplates, communicating only through efficient hand signals. Luna seemed to reach some kind of conclusion. She began drawing symbols on the ship's display, showing Marcus pictures that looked like evolutionary charts. She pointed to primitive Zephyrians, then more advanced ones, then to Marcus, then to the soldiers in the recordings. The progression was clear, but the meaning remained elusive. The ship's sensors detected another vessel approaching their position. Marcus's heart sank as he recognized the configuration on their screens. It was identical to the warships in Luna's recordings, bearing down on them at high speed. The black hull absorbed their scanning beams, making it difficult to get detailed readings, but the weapon signatures were unmistakable. Luna saw the readings and let out a cry of despair. She grabbed Marcus's arm with surprising strength, her eyes wide with renewed terror. But this time it seemed directed at the approaching ship rather than at him personally. She began speaking rapidly, gesturing between Marcus and the approaching vessel with increasing urgency. Marcus looked at his reflection in the ship's polished surfaces and saw what Luna saw: the face of humanity's future, or perhaps its past. The approaching ship meant answers, but as its weapons powered up and targeting systems locked onto their position, Marcus realized those answers might come at a price none of them were prepared to pay. The black warship moved with a predatory grace that defied physics as Marcus understood it. No chemical rockets or ion drives were visible, yet it accelerated and maneuvered as if gravity itself bent to its will. The vessel's hull seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to track visually against the starfield. Marcus watched the tactical display with growing dread as the unknown ship's weapon systems came online. Energy readings spiked beyond anything their salvage vessel could hope to match. Whatever technology powered that warship was centuries ahead of current human capabilities. Luna's terror had transformed into something else, a desperate urgency as she worked frantically at her ship's damaged communication array. Her delicate fingers danced across controls that responded with flickering lights and wounded electronic sounds. She was trying to send a message, but whether to the approaching vessel or to her own people remained unclear. "Marcus, we need to move," Janet called from the pilot station of their attached salvage ship. That thing's weapons could vaporize us without breaking stride, but Marcus couldn't leave. Not yet. Luna's behavior suggested there was more to this encounter than a simple first contact scenario gone wrong. The way she looked at him, with that mixture of fear and recognition, implied a connection he didn't understand but desperately needed to uncover. The black warship slowed as it approached their position, its movements becoming deliberate and calculated. Through the cargo bay's reinforced windows, Marcus could see details that made his blood run cold. The hull plating was covered in symbols that looked disturbingly familiar. Angular geometric patterns that reminded him of ancient human military insignia, but evolved and refined beyond recognition. Luna succeeded in establishing a communication link just as the warship settled into a parallel course. The main display flickered to life, showing the bridge of the approaching vessel. What Marcus saw there challenged everything he thought he knew about humanity's future. The bridge was manned by humans, but not quite the humans Marcus knew. They were taller, their builds more refined, with facial features that suggested generations of genetic optimization. Their skin had a subtle metallic sheen, and their eyes held an intelligence that seemed both familiar and utterly alien. They wore uniforms of deep black material that seemed to absorb light, with no visible insignia or rank markings. The captain stepped forward, and Marcus felt his knees go weak. The man could have been his twin, if Marcus had been born centuries in the future and subjected to extensive genetic enhancement. The resemblance was uncanny, the same facial structure, the same build, even the same careful way of moving. But where Marcus's eyes held warmth and curiosity, this future version of himself gazed out with cold calculation. "Temporal displacement confirmed," the captain said in English, though his accent carried subtle inflections that suggested the language had evolved significantly. "Primitive human vessel identified. Zephyrian survivor located." Marcus stepped forward, his voice catching in his throat. "Who are you? What happened to my people?" The captain's expression remained unchanged, but something flickered in his eyes. Perhaps recognition, perhaps amusement. "Your people? We are your people, Marcus Chen. We are what humanity becomes when it embraces its true nature." Luna had been listening to the exchange with growing agitation. She began speaking rapidly in her melodic language, gesturing between Marcus and the screen with obvious distress. The captain listened for a moment, then touched a control on his uniform. When he spoke again, it was in fluent Zephyrian. The conversation between the captain and Luna was brief but intense. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but the body language was clear enough. Luna was pleading, the captain was refusing, and something terrible was about to happen. "The Zephyrian will be transferred to our vessel for processing," the captain announced. Switching back to English, "You will return to your primitive timeline and speak of this encounter to no one." "Processing?" Marcus demanded. "What does that mean?" The captain's smile was cold and predatory. "The Zephyrians possess technology we require. Their neural patterns contain navigation data for their hidden colonies. We extract what we need regardless of the cost to the individual." Horror flooded through Marcus as he understood. These future humans weren't just at war with the Zephyrians. They were systematically harvesting them, treating an entire species as a resource to be exploited. Luna's terror wasn't just fear of an enemy. It was the fear of a laboratory specimen facing vivisection. "You can't do this," Marcus said, stepping protectively in front of Luna. "They're people, not tools." "People?" The captain laughed, a sound devoid of genuine humor. "Sentiment is a luxury the future cannot afford, Marcus Chen. When you've seen what we've seen, experienced what we've experienced, you'll understand. Humanity's survival requires difficult choices." Luna grabbed Marcus's arm, her touch urgent and desperate. She began drawing symbols on her ship's display again, but this time the images were different. She showed him a timeline, Zephyrians living peacefully. Then the arrival of the black ships, then systematic destruction spreading across the galaxy. But in the corner of each image, she drew a small symbol that looked remarkably like the salvage ship's identification badge. "She's trying to tell us something," Rodriguez observed, studying the drawings. "Look at that symbol. It's not Zephyrian, it's human, but not the same as those other ships." Marcus studied the progression of images more carefully. In Luna's drawings, there were two types of human ships: the predatory black vessels that brought destruction, and smaller, more familiar designs that seemed to be helping Zephyrians escape. The timeline showed a branching point where humanity split into two different paths. "A temporal schism," Janet breathed, understanding dawning in her voice. "She's saying we're from a different timeline entirely." The captain's expression shifted, becoming more alert and dangerous. "Impossible. The timeline is fixed. We've seen to that." But Luna was already moving, her hands flying over her ship's controls with renewed purpose. The vessel's engines, thought to be completely dead, suddenly flared to life. Emergency power coursed through damaged systems, and the ship's weapons, what few still functioned, began charging. "She's preparing to fight," Marcus realized. "A damaged medical frigate against a fully armed warship. She'll be destroyed in seconds." The captain's voice carried cold finality. "Stand down, Zephyrian. Resistance will only make the extraction process more painful." Luna looked at Marcus one last time, her large eyes filled with something that transcended fear. She was making a choice, he realized. Not just to fight, but to trust. She had recognized something in him that separated him from the future humans, something that gave her hope. She began speaking in her musical language. But this time, the ship's translator had enough data to provide a rough interpretation. The words appeared on the display in halting English. "Marcus Chen from past timeline. Hope for different future. Must survive. Must remember. Us choose different path." The black warship's weapons locked onto Luna's vessel, energy readings climbing toward lethal levels. In seconds, she would be dead, and with her would die any chance of understanding how humanity had become the monsters in those recordings. Marcus looked at his reflection in the display one more time. seeing both himself and the cold captain who claimed to be humanity's future. Two paths diverged before him, and for the first time, he understood that the choice between them might determine the fate of every intelligent species in the galaxy. Luna's ship shuddered as its weapons reached full charge, preparing to make a final, desperate stand against impossible odds. Marcus made a decision that would echo across time itself. As the Black warship's weapons reached critical charge and Luna's damaged vessel prepared for its final stand, he stepped to his salvage ship's communication array and opened all channels. "This is Marcus Chen of the independent salvage vessel Morningstar," he broadcast on every frequency his ship could access. "I'm documenting a first contact scenario with a species called the Zephyrians. Any human vessels in the area are ordered to stand down and allow peaceful resolution of this encounter." The captain's face on the display showed genuine surprise for the first time. "You don't understand what you're interfering with, Primitive. Your actions could unravel everything we've built." "Good," Marcus replied firmly. "If what you've built requires genocide, then it needs to be unraveled." Luna's ship suddenly surged forward, but instead of attacking the warship, she aimed directly for Marcus's salvage vessel. Her intentions became clear as docking clamps extended from her ship's hull. She was seeking protection, gambling that the presence of past timeline humans would make the future humans hesitate. The gamble worked, but only briefly. The captain's expression hardened into something that barely resembled human emotion. "You've forced our hand. Temporal contamination cannot be permitted." The Black warship's weapons pivoted toward Marcus's ship, and he realized with crystal clarity that these future humans were prepared to kill their own ancestors to preserve their timeline. The cold logic was terrifying in its simplicity. Eliminate the variables that could change the past and ensure their version of the future remained intact. But Luna's ship had successfully docked, and she was already moving through the airlock with inhuman speed. She carried a device that looked like a crystalline flower, its faceted surfaces pulsing with internal light. When she pressed it into Marcus's hands, images flooded his mind. He saw the branching timeline from her perspective. In one branch, humanity discovered faster-than-light travel and immediately began expanding aggressively, driven by fear and scarcity mindset. They encountered the Zephyrians and, instead of attempting communication, attacked preemptively. The war that followed was brutally one-sided, with humans developing increasingly advanced technology, specifically designed to harvest and exploit other species. In the other branch, the one Luna believed, Marcus could create, his first contact led to cooperation. Humans and Zephyrians shared knowledge, with Zephyrian biotechnology combining with human engineering to create wonders neither species could achieve alone. The galaxy became a place of diversity and growth rather than conquest and extraction. The device in Marcus's hands was more than a simple communication tool. It was a quantum recorder, capable of preserving information across timeline branches. Luna had been documenting the war crimes of the future humans, building evidence that could prevent this dark timeline from ever occurring. "Janet, Rodriguez, get us out of here," Marcus shouted as the Black warship's weapons reached full charge. "Maximum burn any direction." The salvage ship's engines roared to life, but they were woefully inadequate compared to the pursuing warship. Energy beams lanced past their hull, each near miss closer than the last. The captain was toying with them, demonstrating the futility of resistance. Luna worked frantically at a portable console she'd brought from her ship, her fingers dancing over controls that responded with increasingly urgent tones. She was uploading something into Marcus's ship systems, but the process was slow and the pursuing warship was rapidly closing distance. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," Rodriguez called from the pilot station. "They're charging some kind of tractor beam. If they catch us, we're done." The quantum recorder in Marcus's hands suddenly blazed with light, and more images flooded his consciousness. He saw the true scope of the future humans' empire. Dozens of species enslaved or extinct. Entire star systems stripped of resources, and at the center of it all, humans who had lost every trace of empathy or compassion in their pursuit of dominance. But he also saw something else. The future humans weren't from just one timeline. They were actively hunting down and eliminating alternate versions of history, ensuring that their dark path was the only one that could exist. They had become temporal predators, destroying any possibility of a better future for any species. Luna's upload completed just as the tractor beam locked onto their ship. The salvage vessel shuddered to a halt, its engines straining uselessly against the invisible force holding them. On the display, the captain's face showed cold satisfaction. "Bring them aboard," he ordered. "The primitives will be useful for extracting complete neural patterns. The Zephyrian's knowledge of alternate timelines makes her especially valuable." But Luna had one more surprise. The upload she'd completed wasn't just data. It was a virus designed specifically to target the advanced systems of future human technology. As the tractor beam drew them toward the warship, the quantum recorder transmitted its payload directly into the enemy vessel's computer core. The effect was immediate and devastating. The black warship's smooth operation faltered as systems began shutting down or operating erratically. The artificial gravity fluctuated, lights flickered, and most importantly, the tractor beam wavered. "Now!" Marcus shouted, and Rodriguez threw their engines to full power. The salvage ship broke free just as the warship's defense systems came online, automatically isolating the infected areas. But the damage was done. They had precious seconds while the future humans dealt with the digital attack. Luna grabbed Marcus's arm and pointed toward a nearby nebula, her meaning clear. The swirling clouds of gas and cosmic dust would provide cover, masking their energy signature and making them difficult to track. It was their only chance of escape. As they fled toward the nebula, Luna began transferring more data from the quantum recorder to Marcus's ship. The information was staggering. Detailed records of future human atrocities, technological specifications for their advanced weapons, and most importantly, the exact coordinates and timing of historical intervention points where the timeline could be altered. "She's giving us a roadmap," Janet realized, studying the incoming data. "Everything we need to prevent this dark future from happening." But the black warship was already recovering, its advanced systems adapting to and neutralizing Luna's virus. The captain's face reappeared on their display, his expression promising terrible retribution. "You've only delayed the inevitable," he said. "We know your ship's specifications, your crew complement, your exact position in the timeline. We will find you, and when we do, your deaths will serve as an example to any other primitives who dare interfere with destiny." The communication cut off as Marcus's ship reached the nebula's edge. The swirling cosmic clouds closed around them, providing blessed concealment from their pursuers. But Marcus knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The future humans had technology far beyond anything his era could match, and they had the patience of centuries to hunt down their quarry. Luna looked at him with those large, expressive eyes, and for the first time since they'd met, he saw something other than fear. She saw hope, and the responsibility that came with it. The quantum recorder in his hands contained the power to reshape history itself. But using that power would make him and his crew the most hunted fugitives in time. As their ship disappeared into the nebula's depths, Marcus realized that saving Luna had been just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come, and the stakes were nothing less than the soul of humanity itself. Hidden within the nebula's swirling embrace, Marcus stared at the quantum recorder as its crystalline surfaces revealed humanity's darkest possible future. The device projected holographic displays showing the systematic extinction of dozens of species, each conquest more brutal than the last. But buried within the horror was something unexpected, evidence that the future humans weren't invincible. Luna worked tirelessly at the makeshift console she'd assembled from salvaged components, her delicate fingers coaxing information from damaged systems. Through painful trial and error with the ship's basic translator, she began to communicate more effectively with the human crew. "Your timeline," she managed in broken English, the words clearly difficult for her to pronounce. "Still pure, not contaminated by conquest hunger. You can change path." Marcus studied the timeline projections more carefully, noting subtle patterns in the data. "These intervention points you've marked, they're all crucial moments in human development. First contact protocols, resource allocation decisions, military doctrine establishment." Luna nodded enthusiastically, then pulled up a new display showing what appeared to be a resistance network. To Marcus's amazement, it wasn't just Zephyrians fighting against the future humans. There were humans too, people from various timelines who had somehow retained their compassion and were working to prevent the dark future from solidifying. "Not all humans become monsters," Luna explained, her language skills improving rapidly as the translator accumulated more data. "Some remember what it means to be truly human. They fight from shadows, protect those who cannot protect themselves. Rodriguez looked up from his sensor station with concern. We've got movement on the edge of the nebula. Multiple contacts, all showing the same configuration as that black warship. The future humans had brought reinforcements. Through the nebula's interference, Marcus could make out at least 6 vessels surrounding their hiding place. Each ship was larger and more advanced than the one they'd already encountered, suggesting this was a significant operation rather than a chance encounter. They're not just hunting us, Janet realized, studying the search patterns. They're hurting us, driving us toward something. Luna's expression grew alarmed as she recognized the tactical formation. She began speaking rapidly, gesturing at the display with obvious urgency. The translator struggled with her quick speech. But the meaning was clear enough. They were being driven into a trap. At the center of the nebula lay something the sensors couldn't quite identify, a massive structure that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't a ship or a space station, but rather something that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Energy readings fluctuated wildly, suggesting technology that operated on principles unknown to current human science. Temporal anchor, Luna finally managed to say, the words heavy with dread. They build these to lock timelines in place. Once activated, no change is possible. Your future becomes their past. Marcus felt the weight of realization settle on his shoulders. The future humans weren't just preventing him from changing history, they were making it impossible for anyone to change it. The temporal anchor would crystallize their dark timeline, making it the only possible version of events that could ever occur. But Luna had more information to share. The quantum recorder revealed that temporal anchors had one critical weakness. They required a conscious observer from the original timeline to function properly. Someone had to willingly accept the dark future for it to become permanent reality. That's why they wanted you alive, Marcus understood. Not just for information, but as a witness. They need someone from your timeline to validate their version of history. Luna nodded grimly. And now they need you. Original human from pure timeline. If you accept their future as inevitable, anchor becomes permanent. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. The future humans had maneuvered Marcus into a position where he would witness the activation of the temporal anchor. They were counting on his despair at seeing their superior technology to break his will and make him accept that their dark future was inevitable. Well, they're going to be disappointed, Rodriguez said firmly, because we're not giving up. Janet was already plotting escape routes through the nebula, but their options were limited. The surrounding warships had them completely boxed in, and their salvage vessels' weapons were laughably inadequate against such advanced opposition. Luna suddenly became very animated. Pointing at specific components of her portable console, she began rapidly reconfiguring the device, connecting it to the quantum recorder in ways that made the crystalline artifact pulse with increasing intensity. What is she doing? Marcus asked. The answer came as Luna's console began displaying technical schematics that were clearly beyond current human understanding. She was building something, a weapon that could disrupt the temporal anchor's operation, but the power requirements were enormous, far beyond what their small ship could provide. Unless, Luna said, looking directly at Marcus with an expression that mixed hope and terrible determination. Quantum recorder contains compressed timeline energy. All possible futures stored in crystalline matrix. If released properly, Marcus understood. The quantum recorder wasn't just a storage device, it was a bomb capable of shattering the temporal anchor. But the explosion would also destroy everyone within the nebula, including Luna and his crew. The future humans seemed to sense something was happening. The temporal anchor began powering up, its exotic energies creating visible distortions in spacetime around it. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as the device prepared to lock their dark timeline into permanent existence. Marcus Chen, the familiar voice of the future captain, echoed through the nebula on all frequencies. You've seen our power. You understand the futility of resistance. Accept the inevitable, and your crew will be allowed to live as servants of the new order. Marcus looked at his teammates, Janet with her fierce determination, Rodriguez with his unshakable loyalty, and Luna with her desperate hope for a better future. He thought about the billions of humans back in his own timeline, living their lives in blissful ignorance of the horror that awaited them. Counteroffer, Marcus replied, activating his ship's communication array. You power down that temporal anchor and leave this timeline alone, and I won't detonate a quantum torpedo that will erase you from existence. Luna stared at him in shock. She hadn't expected him to understand the full implications of her weapon so quickly, or to be willing to make such a sacrifice. The captain's laughter echoed through space. Impossible. Your primitive technology cannot threaten us. But Marcus wasn't bluffing. He'd studied the quantum recorder's specifications carefully, and Luna's modifications had turned it into something unprecedented. A weapon that could literally erase specific timelines from existence. The future human's dark path would simply cease to have ever happened. The quantum recorder contains data from every timeline, Marcus explained calmly, including yours. Luna's modifications have weaponized that information. One quantum pulse and your entire existence becomes a might have been. For the first time, uncertainty crept into the captain's voice. You're bluffing. You wouldn't destroy yourself and your crew. Marcus looked at Luna one more time, seeing in her eyes the same determination that had driven her to fight against impossible odds. She nodded slightly, understanding his choice and accepting it. Watch me, Marcus said, and reached for the quantum recorder's activation control. The temporal anchor's energy readings spiked as the future humans desperately tried to complete the timeline lock before Marcus could act. Reality itself began to fracture around them as past, present, and future collided in the swirling chaos of the nebula. Marcus's finger hovered over the control that would either save the future or destroy everything he held dear. Marcus's finger stopped millimeters from the activation control as Luna's voice cut through the chaos. Wait, there is another way. She had been frantically working at her console while the temporal anchor powered up, and now her eyes blazed with sudden inspiration. The quantum recorder's crystalline matrix was pulsing in patterns Marcus hadn't seen before, responding to commands Luna was inputting at incredible speed. Temporal anchor requires specific resonance frequency, Luna explained rapidly, her English improving under pressure. If we can match frequency but invert the phase, we can turn their weapon against them. Instead of locking timeline, we can unlock it completely. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Instead of destroying the future human's timeline, they could open it up to infinite possibilities. Every choice that had led to the dark future would become changeable again, allowing history to flow in new directions. How much time do we need? He asked. Luna's fingers danced over her controls. 17 minutes to achieve proper resonance match, but Anchor will be fully powered in 12 minutes. That's cutting it close, Rodriguez observed from his station, where he was monitoring the approaching warships. And we've got another problem. Those ships are moving into bombardment formation. They're planning to destroy us before we can do anything. Janet was already implementing evasive maneuvers, using the nebula's dense gas clouds to mask their position, but their options were rapidly running out. The future human sensors were far more advanced than anything their salvage ship could evade indefinitely. Marcus studied the tactical display, noting the precise positioning of the enemy vessels. There was something oddly familiar about their formation, as if he'd seen it before in military textbooks. Then he realized why. It was a standard Earth Defense Force pattern adapted for three-dimensional space combat. They're using our own tactics against us, he muttered. Formations developed by Earth's military academy. Luna looked up from her work with interest. Your military knowledge might be advantage. They think like you because they are you, but from different path. If you can predict their moves. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think like the cold captain who wore his face. The formation was designed to prevent escape while maximizing firepower concentration, but it had a weakness. If one ship could be forced out of position, it would create a gap in the containment field. Janet, bring us around to bearing 27 Mark IV, he ordered. Full impulse toward the lead ship. Marcus, that's suicide, Rodriguez protested. We can't outfight one of those warships, let alone 6. We're not going to fight them, Marcus replied. We're going to make them fight each other. Luna understood immediately, her large eyes widening with something that might have been admiration. Clever. Force lead ship to choose between maintaining formation and destroying target. Either choice creates tactical disadvantage. The salvage ship accelerated toward the nearest warship, its engines pushed beyond safe operating limits. The future humans responded exactly as Marcus predicted. The lead ship broke formation to intercept, creating a gap that the other vessels moved to fill. But Marcus wasn't done. At the last possible second, Janet pulled their ship into a sharp turn that brought them directly between two of the pursuing warships. In the split second of confusion that followed, both enemy vessels locked onto what they thought was Marcus's ship. "Now!" Marcus shouted. Janet killed their engines and activated every electronic countermeasure their ship possessed. To the future humans' advanced sensors, the salvage ship seemed to vanish just as their targeting systems achieved lock. For a crucial moment, each warship thought the other was the target. The resulting exchange of fire was brief but devastating. Both warships' shields flared and failed under the impact of weapons designed to destroy far more primitive opponents. One ship listed badly, its hull cracked and venting atmosphere. The other spun out of control, its navigation systems damaged. 4 minutes gained, Luna announced, not looking up from her increasingly frantic work. But Temporal Anchor is adapting. They're trying to complete the lock manually. Through the viewing port, Marcus could see the massive structure at the nebula's heart beginning to glow with an eerie light that seemed to exist outside the normal spectrum. Space-time itself was bending around it, creating visible distortions that hurt to look at directly. The remaining 4 warships had reorganized quickly, their formation now much tighter and more cautious. They were no longer trying to capture Marcus's ship. The energy signatures building around their weapons indicated they were preparing to destroy it outright. "Luna, how much more time do you need?" Marcus asked. 8 minutes minimum, she replied, sweat beading on her pale blue skin despite the ship's cool temperature. "Resonance calculations are incredibly complex. One error and we destroy ourselves instead of freeing timeline." Rodriguez was tracking multiple missile launches from the approaching warships. "We've got incoming ordnance. High-yield antimatter warheads designed specifically to punch through nebula interference." Marcus felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on him. They needed 8 minutes but had perhaps 2 before the missiles reached them. The future humans had finally stopped playing games and committed to ending the threat permanently. But Luna had one more surprise. The quantum recorder suddenly blazed with light, and she began speaking rapidly in her own language while her hands moved in complex patterns over her console. The translation came through fragmented and unclear, but Marcus caught enough to understand she was doing something unprecedented. "She's linking directly to the quantum field," Janet breathed, reading the energy patterns on her instruments. "That's impossible. Organic beings can't interface with quantum mechanics at that level." Luna looked at Marcus with eyes that now glowed with the same ethereal light as the quantum recorder. "Spherians evolved differently than humans. We can touch the quantum realm with our consciousness, but process is dangerous." Marcus understood. Luna was risking her life to manually calculate the resonance frequencies needed to disrupt the temporal anchor. Her mind was literally merging with the quantum field, allowing her to process information at speeds that would burn out any conventional computer. "Don't do this," Marcus said. "There has to be another way." Luna's smile was sad but determined. "This is why I was not afraid when I first saw you. In quantum realm I can see probability streams. Your timeline has highest chance of choosing compassion over conquest. Worth any sacrifice to preserve that possibility." The incoming missiles were 30 seconds away when Luna's calculations reached completion. The quantum recorder's light intensified until it was almost blinding, and reality itself seemed to ripple around their ship. "Resonance match achieved," Luna announced, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Initiating timeline unlock sequence." The temporal anchor's response was immediate and violent. Instead of locking the dark timeline into place, it began to oscillate wildly as competing probability streams fought for dominance. The future humans' carefully constructed path to galactic dominance suddenly became just one possibility among millions. Through the chaos, Marcus heard the future captain's voice, but it was distorting and fragmenting as his timeline began to shift. "Impossible. Anchor failing. Multiple probability cascades. Timeline integrity compromised." The warships around them flickered in and out of existence as their timeline became uncertain. Some versions of the future still led to the dark path, but others branched toward cooperation and peace. The quantum recorder was forcing reality to acknowledge that the future was still unwritten. Luna collapsed at her console, the strain of quantum interface finally overwhelming her biological systems. But her work was complete. The temporal anchor was not just disrupted, it was inverting, actively unlocking the timeline streams it had been designed to constrain. Marcus caught Luna as she fell, her skin now pale and cool to the touch. "Did we do it?" she whispered. "Is future free?" Marcus looked at the displays showing probability cascades rippling outward from their position. Every choice point in human history was becoming fluid again, open to change and new possibilities. The dark future was fading, becoming just one path among many rather than an inevitable destination. "Yes," he said softly, "the future is free, and it's going to be beautiful." Reality stabilized slowly around them as the probability cascade settled into new patterns. The temporal anchor, its purpose inverted, had become something unprecedented, a beacon of possibility rather than constraint. Where once it had threatened to lock history into a single dark path, it now broadcast infinite potential across time and space. Luna stirred in Marcus's arms, her large eyes focusing with effort. The ethereal glow was fading from her skin, but something had fundamentally changed about her. She seemed more translucent, as if her connection to the quantum realm had left her partially phased out of normal reality. "The timeline streams," she whispered, her voice carrying echoes of vast possibilities. "I can still see them. So many beautiful futures now possible. But also," her expression grew troubled, "the dark path still exists, weakened but not destroyed." Marcus helped her sit up, noting how she seemed to weigh almost nothing now. "What do you mean?" Luna gestured weakly at the quantum recorder, its crystalline surfaces now showing swirling patterns of light and shadow. "Timeline inversion created quantum uncertainty, but some probability streams are more stable than others. The darkness will try to reassert itself. Future humans will adapt, find new ways to force their path into reality." Through the viewing port, they could see the results of the timeline shift. The black warships were flickering between different configurations. Sometimes they appeared as the brutal conquest vessels they'd encountered, other times as sleeker exploration ships bearing peaceful insignia. The future humans themselves were changing, their faces cycling through different expressions as various timeline possibilities fought for dominance. "They're experiencing multiple timeline memories simultaneously," Janet observed, watching the tactical displays. "Must be incredibly disorienting." Rodriguez was tracking the energy signatures from the inverted temporal anchor. "Whatever Luna did, it's spreading. We're detecting similar quantum fluctuations at points throughout the galaxy. It's like a wave of possibility expanding outward at faster than light speeds." Marcus understood the implications. Every species, every civilization, every individual choice point was being freed from the constraints of predetermined fate. The galaxy itself was becoming a canvas of infinite potential. But Luna was right about the danger. As the immediate chaos of timeline inversion settled, Marcus could see patterns emerging in the quantum display. Some probability streams were naturally more stable than others, and the dark path had deep roots in human psychology. Fear, scarcity, thinking, the drive to dominate rather than cooperate. "How do we ensure the better futures take hold?" Marcus asked. Luna struggled to her feet, her form becoming more solid as she focused her will. "Choice points, critical moments where single decisions determine which timeline becomes dominant. We must reach these points before Dark Path reasserts itself." The quantum recorder suddenly projected a three-dimensional map of space-time, showing branching paths like a vast tree. Critical nodes pulsed with different colors: red for decision, points that led toward the dark timeline; blue for those that led toward cooperation and peace. "First contact protocols," Luna explained, pointing to a cluster of nodes near Earth's timeline. "When humanity first encounters other species, initial responses determine everything that follows. If fear dominates first meeting, Dark Path becomes more likely." Marcus studied the map more carefully. One node in particular drew his attention: a first contact scenario scheduled to occur just 3 months in his own timeline's future. Earth's first official encounter with alien intelligence, and according to the probability calculations, it was currently weighted heavily toward the fear response. "We have to get back," Marcus realized. We need to prepare humanity for first contact, make sure they respond with curiosity instead of aggression. But returning to his own timeline meant leaving Luna, and her condition was obviously deteriorating. The quantum interface had fundamentally altered her biology, making her existence increasingly unstable. She was literally fading away as her connection to normal reality weakened. "I cannot return with you," Luna confirmed, reading his thoughts. "With the enhanced perception her quantum connection provided, my pattern is too dispersed across probability streams. But Quantum Recorder contains everything needed to guide humanity toward better path." The future captain's voice suddenly cut through their conversation, but it was different now, less certain, more confused. "Marcus Chen, timeline integrity compromised. Multiple memory streams active. Request clarification on mission parameters." Marcus looked at the display showing the future human vessels. They were stabilizing into a new configuration, still advanced, but no longer purely military. The crews were obviously struggling with conflicting memories as different timeline possibilities competed for dominance in their minds. "They're becoming uncertain," Janet observed. "Without the dark timeline being locked in place, they're experiencing memories of other possibilities. Some of them remember being explorers instead of conquerors." Luna nodded weakly. "Timeline uncertainty creates opportunity for redemption. Even future humans can choose different path if given chance to remember their original nature." Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He activated the communication array and addressed the future captain directly. "This is Marcus Chen. I'm offering you a choice. You can try to restore your dark timeline and spend eternity fighting an endless war against possibility itself. Or you can help us build something better." The response came after a long pause, and when it did, the captain's voice carried a new quality, something almost like wonder. "I remember. Exploration missions. Peaceful first contacts. Why did we abandon that path?" "Fear," Marcus replied simply. "Fear of the unknown, fear of scarcity, fear of being less than perfect. But fear is just one choice among many. You can choose differently." Luna was becoming increasingly translucent, her form wavering like heat shimmer. But she managed to reach the quantum recorder one last time, her fingers passing partially through its crystalline surface as she made final adjustments. "Gift for you," she whispered to Marcus. "And for all humanity. Complete record of peaceful first contact protocols. Everything your species needs to choose cooperation over conquest." The quantum recorder's light shifted, becoming warmer and more stable. New data streams appeared in its depths, not just warnings about dark timelines, but positive examples of species working together, sharing knowledge, and building something greater than the sum of their parts. "Thank you," Marcus said, but Luna was fading fast, her consciousness spreading across too many probability streams to maintain coherent form. "Remember," her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, carrying across dimensions. "Choice is always possible. Even in darkest timelines, single act of compassion can change everything. That is true strength of humanity, not ability to conquer, but ability to choose." The last thing Marcus saw of Luna was her smile, filled with hope and trust in humanity's potential for growth. Then she was gone, her consciousness finally dispersing across the quantum field to become part of the fundamental structure of possibility itself. The future captain's voice returned, but now it carried grief and understanding. "We remember now. The fear that drove us. The choices we made. We want to help repair the damage, but we don't know how." Marcus looked at the quantum recorder, now glowing with warm, steady light. Luna's final gift contained not just the data needed to guide humanity's path, but something more precious. Proof that redemption was always possible, even for those who had traveled furthest down the dark road. "We start by going home," Marcus said. "All of us. We return to our timelines and make different choices, better choices." The inverted temporal anchor pulsed one final time, then began to fade as its work was complete. Timeline constraints had been lifted throughout the galaxy, and the future was truly free to be written by the choices of countless individuals across space and time. As the future human vessels prepared to return to their own timeline, Marcus realized that the hardest part was just beginning. He had 3 months to prepare humanity for first contact, and the weight of an entire galaxy's future rested on his ability to help his species choose wisely when the moment came. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the observation deck of the Earth Defense Force headquarters, watching the approaching alien vessel through reinforced windows. The ship was beautiful in its alienness, flowing curves of what appeared to be living metal, with energy patterns that shifted like aurora across its hull. It was nothing like Luna's damaged warship, yet somehow he knew the two species were related. The quantum recorder sat securely in a specially designed containment field nearby, its crystalline surfaces pulsing gently with stored knowledge. Over the past 3 months, Marcus had used its information carefully, sharing just enough with Earth's governments and military leaders to shift their perspective without revealing the full scope of what he'd experienced. Status report, Admiral Harrison requested as she joined Marcus at the observation window. The stern woman had been skeptical of Marcus's recommendations initially, but the quantum recorder's technological demonstrations had gradually won her over. The alien vessel is maintaining peaceful approach vectors, Marcus reported. All weapon systems powered down, universal friendship protocols active on all frequencies. They're following Luna's contact procedures exactly. Admiral Harrison nodded approvingly. Your mysterious source certainly knew their business. These protocols are far more sophisticated than anything our xenopsychologists developed. Marcus smiled, remembering Luna's sacrifice and her absolute faith in humanity's potential for growth. The protocols she'd provided weren't just communication methods, they were carefully designed psychological frameworks that encouraged curiosity and cooperation while minimizing fear responses. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel. Audio and visual. The main display activated, revealing the bridge of the approaching ship. Marcus's breath caught as he saw the crew. They were clearly Zephyrians with the same pale blue skin and large expressive eyes as Luna. But these Zephyrians were different somehow, more confident, less fearful. They wore uniforms that suggested scientific rather than military purpose. The captain stepped forward, a graceful being whose movements suggested both intelligence and peaceful intent. When she spoke, her voice carried the same melodic quality as Luna's. But the universal translator worked flawlessly. Greetings, people of Earth. I am Captain Zara of the Zephyrian science vessel Harmony's Light. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship between our peoples. Admiral Harrison stepped forward, following the contact protocols Marcus had helped develop. Welcome to Earth space, Captain Zara. I am Admiral Harrison of the Earth Defense Force. We are honored by your peaceful approach and eager to learn from your people. Marcus watched the exchange with growing amazement. This was the critical choice point Luna had shown him, the moment where humanity's response would determine whether the dark timeline could reassert itself. But instead of fear and aggression, he was witnessing the beginning of something beautiful. Captain Zara's expression brightened noticeably at the warm reception. Your response brings great joy to our hearts. We had hoped to find kindred spirits among the stars, beings who value knowledge and cooperation above conquest and dominance. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. In the dark timeline, these same Zephyrians had been victims of human aggression. But here, in this new possibility Luna had helped create, they were approaching as equals seeking friendship. Captain Zara, Admiral Harrison continued, we would be honored to invite a small delegation to Earth for formal first contact ceremonies. We have scientists and diplomats eager to begin cultural and technological exchanges. Marcus felt a presence beside him and turned to see a faint shimmer in the air, barely visible, like heat waves on a summer day. For just a moment he thought he glimpsed Luna's face, smiling with infinite satisfaction. Then the sensation faded, leaving only the warm glow of the quantum recorder as evidence of her continuing influence. The first contact ceremony took place 1 week later in Geneva, with representatives from every Earth nation present. Marcus stood among the scientific advisors, the quantum recorder's knowledge, having earned him a place on the contact team despite his humble origins as a salvage ship operator. Captain Zara and her delegation were everything humanity could have hoped for in first contact: intelligent, curious, peaceful, and genuinely interested in mutual benefit rather than exploitation. The technologies they offered could solve many of Earth's environmental and energy problems, while human engineering and creativity impressed the Zephyrians in return. But the most remarkable moment came during the cultural exchange session. Captain Zara presented a gift to humanity, a crystalline artifact that looked remarkably similar to Luna's quantum recorder. Though smaller and purely commemorative, this memory crystal contains the history of our species, Captain Zara explained. Both our triumphs and our mistakes, our hopes and our fears. We share it as a symbol of trust and to show that we believe in your species' potential for wisdom. As Marcus watched the ceremony, he noticed something that made his heart race. In the holographic displays showing Zephyrian history, there were brief glimpses of a figure that looked exactly like Luna. She was shown as a hero of her people, someone who had made a great sacrifice to ensure peace between species. After the ceremony, Marcus approached Captain Zara privately. The figure in your historical display is the one shown making a sacrifice for peace. Can you tell me about her? Captain Zara's expression became reverent. You noticed Luna the Timekeeper. She is a legendary figure in our culture, said to have given her life to prevent a great war between species. The stories say she traveled across time itself to plant seeds of peace, ensuring that when species finally met, they would choose cooperation over conflict. Marcus felt tears in his eyes as he understood. Luna hadn't just sacrificed herself to stop the dark timeline. She had become part of Zephyrian legend, inspiring her people across generations to choose peace when the moment came. The legend says, Captain Zara continued, that Luna's spirit watches over all first contact scenarios, guiding species toward understanding. Many of our explorers carry small memory crystals in her honor, hoping to embody her wisdom in their own encounters. Marcus looked at the quantum recorder in his hands, understanding now why it had remained stable, while Luna herself had faded. She had anchored her consciousness in the device, ensuring that her knowledge and compassion would continue to influence events across time. 6 months after first contact, Marcus stood once again on the observation deck, but now he was watching joint human-Zephyrian research vessels departing for deep space exploration. The partnership between species had exceeded everyone's most optimistic projections, with collaborative technologies advancing both civilizations at unprecedented rates. The quantum recorder sat in the ship's museum now, labeled simply as First Contact Memorial, with no mention of time travel or alternate timelines. The public didn't need to know about the dark path that had been avoided. It was enough that the bright path had been chosen. Janet and Rodriguez had both accepted positions with the Joint Exploration Fleet, their experience with unknown technologies making them valuable assets. They often stopped by to visit Marcus, who had chosen to remain on Earth as director of the new Interspecies Cultural Exchange Institute. Any regrets? Janet asked during one of their visits. You could have had any position in the fleet. Instead, you're stuck here dealing with bureaucrats and cultural committees. Marcus smiled, touching the quantum recorder's display case gently. This is where I'm needed. Every day we make choices that shape the future. Someone needs to remember that those choices matter. As his friends departed for another exploration mission, Marcus felt that familiar shimmer in the air beside him. This time Luna's presence was stronger, more distinct. Though she remained invisible to others, he could sense her approval and gratitude. Thank you, he whispered, for trusting us to choose the right path. The shimmer intensified for a moment, and Marcus could swear he heard her voice carried on a breeze that shouldn't have existed in the enclosed space. Thank you for proving that trust was justified. Marcus looked out at the stars, where human and Zephyrian ships traveled together toward unknown horizons. Somewhere out there, other species waited to be discovered, and each first contact would be another choice point in the galaxy's unfolding story. The dark timeline was still possible. It always would be, as long as fear and hatred existed in thinking beings. But Luna had shown him something equally true. No matter how dark the path might seem, there was always another choice available. The future belonged to those brave enough to choose hope over fear, cooperation over conquest, and compassion over control. In the end, that was humanity's greatest strength, not their ability to dominate the galaxy, but their capacity to choose to be better than they were. And in making that choice, they had earned their place among the stars not as conquerors, But as friends, the alien female had looked terrified at his presence because she had seen humanity's potential for both greatness and horror. But through her sacrifice and his choices, terror had been transformed into hope, and the galaxy was brighter for it.